Let's do it!
Hey, good morning, Hacksters! This is gonna be, well, maybe it won't be so energetic, no promises, but we have an amazing guest today, who's Tranovich, creator of Electromancy, the robot metal band. And I'm so excited to interview you because I've seen so much of your cool work over the years, and like this is from the last couple of years, right?
Yeah, this has been my one big project for the last little bit of time, at least as far as, hacking goes. Yeah.
So tell us about Electromancy. What is it? What have you got here?
Yeah, okay. So Electromancy is as it says on the tin, a robot metal band. So I like the name Electromancy for my band is like Mancy kind of means magic and electro is electricity. So Electromancy, like electricity magic. And so I started this just a couple years ago. The kind of idea kicked out of I started having some health issues that started severely limiting my hand use. I couldn't really play guitar anymore, and I always had this dream of coming out with a heavy metal album. And I was like just starting to get really serious about this dream when these health issues started, and I was like, oh, what do I do about that? And then suddenly like it like dawned on me, like I love electronics, I love building stuff, like I love music, and decided to try putting those together and making some self-playing instruments. And so the band is primarily self-playing instruments. I generally compose most of the music, and I have robot guitars, robot drums, and I even have, that are just off to the side here, these creepy mannequins that actually have like LEDs and stuff inside them, and they're my bandmates, and then I do some stuff on stage as well. So that's the idea. And kind of at the core of this, the first big piece I made and is this robot guitar. So this is a self-playing guitar I made. Probably finished it up about a year ago, and so I spent a lot of the quarantine using it to record my upcoming album. And yeah, I mean, I guess that's the project in a nutshell, and then we can dive into some details. And yeah.
So first question, back in the day, actually my first project on Hackster was a self-playing ukulele, and the way that I did that was with some servos with picks attached to them, and it was kind of horrible. How do you actuate how do you actuate your guitar?
Yeah, great question. So yeah, I was thinking about the servo motors, and then I was thinking about like, what if it was just a motor that continually spun and then just kind of played it more like a violin where it's like a string. And maybe I'll do that because I do love experimental sounds. But how I ended up going with mine is these are all solenoids. Solenoids are just so easy and reliable, is what I love about them. They're on or off. They just kind of smack the pin and come back. And I realized that was mostly what I needed for my guitar. I have 6 strings, and I just wanted them to be able to pluck the string, so each string has its own dedicated solenoid that just strikes it when it's told to. And when it's told to is based on the composition. So I have this set up so that it can be read as a native MIDI device. So anything that sends MIDI data, which is like the common data for a lot of music composition these days, I just plug it into, this is Ableton. This is just like a standard music composition and like kind of software. I'm sure a lot of like EDM producers and even not EDM producers, use Ableton. And so I just plug this directly into Ableton. And when the right note comes up there, the itsy bitsy tells the solenoids which one's supposed to fire, and then it just goes and strikes the pins. And I find the solenoids are just really reliable. I found solenoids that had the right actuation length, that it can just strike one string without hitting the others, which is key, so that they can each have their dedicated. And it's really nice and clean. At the end of the solenoids, I just put these washers to kind of give it that larger area to make sure that it's properly striking. Oops, I just hit a bunch of buttons. That's it going off. My elbow hit my little control pad here.
Oh, cool.
So, and you don't have that. I'll definitely do some more live demos. That was the secret, unintentional first live demo of just seeing it go off when I elbow my keyboard. But yeah, but I guess that showed you how it works, though, right? Like they all just kind of go and strike and strike what it's supposed to. And they don't strum. I was kind of playing around with like a strumming where, you know, most people when they play, it goes over the string. But then every time it went, it would go over the string and back over, which meant it double hit each string. And it was also really hard to get the like height just right, that it would hit the string and go over it without getting caught on either side, or like really like bending the, like fucking up the string, because it is metal on metal. So I just found that stacking it, especially since everything I do is electric guitar and not acoustic, gave more than enough power to actually, you know, get it amplified through an amplifier and sounding good.
Oh, that's so cool. And you have, if you folks, link below is Robot Metal Band on Instagram, and there are some up close videos of this in action, so you can see it just hitting there, which is so cool. Oh, and the drum, of course. We'll get to that later. I'm not putting audio on here, but just imagine that like there's totally headbanging metal going on here. And here's another question. Do these take, for some reason I had the impression that solenoids take some weird voltage situation. Is it easy to control with an itsy bitsy microcontroller, or do you have to do any kind of weird power management?
There's a little bit of weird power management, but I mean, they just run off 12 volts. So
that's not too bad.
Super reasonable. Like each solenoid is about 12 volts and 1 amp. And so, yeah, I mean, I just run it through just some transistors. Just do some transistor switching for voltage. As you can see, that's all it is each one has its own dedicated transistor circuit. So that just kind of pulls the signal up to 12 volts when it's time to fire, which is really, really simple, right? And especially since the itsy bitsy has in the battery range, I think the upper end is 12 volts. So it's nice. I don't even have to, you know, drop that voltage down for the itsy bitsy. I can just run that straight into the battery and pull it up, which is so convenient.
That's awesome. And that the fluffy thing there looks like a mic buffer thingamajig. What are you doing with that?
So this is totally. So I just use this to do some hand muting. Because otherwise, without it, the strings would just kind of ring indefinitely.
Right.
And a lot of the music I like to play is very like fast and a little bit shorter. And so I just kind of, this is kind of not a great fix, but it works really well actually, because it's like a little oblong and I've got the faceplate, so it holds it in and allows me to adjust it to get it to actually do some really good hand muting without, you know, me having to get my hand in. I was trying to like engineer something really fancy at one point. I was playing with like the silicone to get like the softness of a hand, because like something too firm just creates weird overtones. And then I was trying these clips, and then just like one day I was playing around with it and like none of my hacked stuff was working. I just wanted to make music and I found this microphone thing and shoved it in there. I was like, wow, it sounds infinitely better than everything else I tried. And maybe I'll get back to trying to make something fancy for it. But for now, it's like, you know, if it works, it works.
I kind of love how it looks like you've kind of just shoved a tribble up under there.
Yeah, it really is. This is totally just the beginning of trouble with tribbles.
Yeah. When you're moving this around, I have one more question, and I'd love to get people to hear this. Oh, you know what? I want to be focused on you. Yeah. When you're traveling with this, for example, you have to have kind of a precise contact between the solenoids and the strings, less so because you're not actually trying to, you know, strum across it, but just hit it. But is that a challenge with you when traveling with this thing? Because you're like, you brought it to Noisebridge, and I got to see this in person while you were like building it, which was so exciting for me. And then you bring it home and stuff, and you know, just like transporting projects is such a challenge, but especially when you have to have like things aligned and stuff. So how do you deal with that?
Yeah, that's great. I mean, the one nice thing is guitar cases are like a thing that are made. You know, I do have to modify mine in order to fit all this extra junk on it. But everything's mounted pretty well. I like have another version of the guitar, which I can actually bring on screen real quick. Oops, 1 second. This one is, you notice this one is kind of mounted where it's sandwiched there. And so it's suspended. So you can see that it has all of the electronics on this hollow body.
Wow.
So it's not affecting it at all. So this is cool and convenient because it doesn't destroy your guitar at all, but it does require like a little bit of alignment. All these pieces are tight enough that like I just kind of need to adjust it a little here and there when I get to the location. But I really prefer to use this one. 1 second, let me just put this back.
That's really cool.
Thanks. So I really do prefer using this one though, because I just decided to say screw it and literally just bolted it in.
We've got a close-up photo here on Instagram.
Yeah.
Oh, and you can show us that. Oh yeah, look at that, beefy.
Yeah, so I just like literally just bolted everything directly into the face of the board and was like, whatever, this is a V1. And you know, I like it. Just a bunch of giant ass bolts and screws. They hold things in place pretty well. So I'm really pleased with this. I feel like I can take this around and everything stays nice and aligned.
And what kind of guitar is that?
This is a Craigslist find. I'm sure it has a name and a brand, but I just decided to go out on Craigslist because my understanding, I mean, there are a couple differences with guitars. I'm not a guitar aficionado, so sorry for whoever hears me explain this and wants to pull out their hair because I'm so wrong. But one of at least the major things for a guitar is how well the fretting and the strings, like how close they are, how it feels to play, like how easy it is to push these down with your fingers because of how close the components are, like how nicely the design is to fit your hand. And because of a lot of those things didn't really matter when I'm not holding the guitar or playing the guitar and I'm just putting a bunch of electronics, I just started with a Craigslist find. I think I found this guitar for like $50 on Craigslist. It was kind of funny. I like went to the guy's house who was selling it, and he like had it all like plugged into his amp to like so I could play it and make sure I like sounded good and felt good. And I came in and I was just like, oh yeah, sure. I like strummed it a couple times. I'm like, sounds good. He's like, oh, you don't want to like shred on it a little? I'm like, I don't really know how to play guitar. I'm just gonna like put a bunch of electronics on it and make it play itself. And the guy was like, okay, you're gonna make a robot out of this? I'm like, yeah, thanks. And he's just like left definitely like a little dumbstruck.
Awesome. That is the perfect response, I think. You have an answer here to a question that people frequently ask. So I'm going to ask you too. What's the deal with fretting it? Like, do you have each string tuned to a particular note and then you just hit that string when that note comes up? So you have like 6 notes to play with, or what?
Yeah, when people ask how I do fretting, my quick answer is I don't fret about it. And so really what I do is I just have each string tuned to a note in the scale that I want to play. And then I have some pedals like octavers and stuff in order to get some other ranges. And then I have some compositions with multiple guitars. Like I showed the other guitar, which I can have playing other notes so I can hit a wider range of notes there. I was, at a time thinking about like, well, how to get motors to press this and how to do this, how to do that. And, a couple reasons why I didn't pursue that right away. One is I'm a big fan of like starting small and simple engineering. So starting with the basics, making sure this works and is totally robust is, kind of the core of it. I do like having some musical constraints. Like it really helps with the creative process. And so it was really fun just being like, okay, how do I work with like this set of notes and the couple pedals I had in order to get kind of a full musical sound I want. And then the last answer, which was really important, is that motors are really expensive. And especially if I'm just like getting Craigslist guitars, it's weirdly cheaper for me to just like get more guitars and have more guitars tuned to notes and then have like this cool array of guitars than it does to try to make this one guitar do everything.
That makes a ton of sense.
Yeah. I'm just like, well, and then it's more fun on stage to have like 3 or 4 guitars all jamming out than this one with like all of that. And and then again, helps with transportation. It just made a lot of sense. And plus, I like music that's more on like the experimental end anyway. So I really didn't want to try to build a guitar that could just mimic what a human does, because that's not interesting to me. So instead, it's this kind of contraption I've made. It definitely can't do some things a human can do. It can't hit like the full range of scale, but it can also do a lot of things a human can't. And so that contrast, I think, actually ends up in some really unique sounding ending music, which for me, I didn't just build this because I wanted to hack on something, even though I do love just hacking on something. I built this because I wanted to actually make music and have a like functional band and make an album with it. So at some point, you just have to decide that your technology is good enough to do what you wanted to, and not just feature creep until infinity.
Okay, so last question before I actually ask you to show us what it can do, because I'm so stoked for that. But you did just mention that you want it to, like, there's things that machines can do that humans can't really do very well, and vice versa, obviously. And in this post, you mentioned that, like, oh, you can do, for example, extremely complex polyrhythms, and you can do this, like, nail the riff every time and like play over 300 ppm. So yeah, tell us about that. Tell us about the contrast between like what you're doing and like what the special aspects are, if I didn't just give it all away.
Yeah, I mean, in a sense you did, but I'll talk about it, right? Because it's, I mean, one, they can play extraordinarily fast, just like really stupid fast. I mean, actually, I have this set up that might be good to show you some of this. So let's like kind of merge this question into the demo. So right now I have, right, we've got the guitar here, which we know and love. And then I have in my, let me take this out a little. In my computer, it's a little hard to see, but so each of these columns is a string, and each of these rows is a different pattern. And so, and each of these boxes is something I can play. And if you looked down here, you would be able to see what the composition looks like. I don't imagine that you'll actually be able to see with any clarity what that really means, just because we're live streaming and it's hard to see. But this is kind of what a composition looks like. And so this pad I have here has a bunch of different colors, and it allows me to hit the pad to just trigger kind of different ones of these, the things in this grid. And so what it allows me to do is hit a note. Let me put this actually back here. 1 second. Let's work on a little camera angles just so that I can use my hands while doing this. So, okay, I think that gives you kind of a good image.
That's an awesome dramatic angle. Very good.
Okay, cool. Great. So it allows me to just take one of these, and I hit it, and you can see that started firing. Let me turn on some sound. So you can hear that. I can turn it off. I can hit that one again. But maybe I want that string to play a different note. Now it's doing it faster. So you can see how when I go down this line, it just allows it to do something like that. If I stop that playing on another one, you can see how it's doing it on one of the higher notes.
Oh, that's some good sound.
Same rhythms, but on the higher note. And then you can kind of do them together, either playing the same thing or have them do two totally different patterns. And so that gets really exciting when then you throw in, all sorts of other stuff. And so you have 3 totally different patterns being played on one guitar.
Wow.
And so that's extraordinarily hard for a human musician to do, is to be like, okay, on this string you're playing this rhythm, on this string you're playing this rhythm in a totally different time signature, and in this one you're playing a totally different pattern. And so it can just create some really, really interesting compositions, because you can have these like patterns that are all unique and kind of rotating along how they relate to each other while all on one instrument. And yeah, again, that's one thing that is like extraordinarily hard to, depending on how complex you get, near impossible for a human musician, which is very exciting for me, and I utilize that a lot in my compositions. And there is a style of music called compositional minimalism, which is sort of like an offshoot of classical, which has really inspired me in my music. That at the core of it, it's a lot of very simple melodies that, when layered, create really complex experiences and complex music. And oftentimes that's a bunch of different instruments playing each simple melodies that are layered. So it's really fun to get to explore that all within one instrument. On top of that, yeah, it can go really fast. So I can just kind of do this, holding this button so it'll get faster. Actually.
Oh, they were getting to that metal sound, yeah.
Like you're starting to just get like tonal overtones.
Yeah, you're getting overtones from the speed of it. It's because, of course, like, so humans, we hear, if I may explain, you know, from about 20 hertz to 20
Wait for the
kilohertz.
dump truck to pass.
Oh yeah.
You can hear you're literally getting overtones from the speed.
Yeah. So when you're hitting it over 20 times a second,
like,
yeah,
the frequency at which the guitar is playing starts to reach human range.
Yeah, that's so cool. Oh my gosh,
which is just totally excessive in every regard, and which is why I love it.
Oh, that's amazing. I never even thought of that. There's also an interesting side effect from this method of actuation where because when you strike the string, you get this little pop of sound. It's almost like, it almost reminds me of one of those old school like claves on an old you know, drum machine or something, and that kind of adds this little pop at the start of every one as well when you're going more slowly.
It really does. And also with the actuation, it's metal striking metal, where normally you have like soft fingery flesh striking the metal of the strings, and since it's actual metal disc, that also increases the overtones, and so there's a lot more like harmonic noise, so to speak, in it, which really works for the style of music that I like. I mean, if you were trying to get just like really clean tones, I would be putting probably like some rubber stoppers on the end or something in order to lessen that. But I really love just like that metal on metal high overtones, running it through a distortion pedal and letting it be like this really thick, chaotic sound where the striking of the notes still obviously like cut through, especially because you have that pop. But it's, but I really love that kind of like harmonic effect, and which also allows you to hear even more clearly some of those like, when it starts, the speed starts going so fast that it starts entering the range, and then you're dealing with like kind of a double oscillator effect, which you normally can only experience with synthesizers, where you have an oscillator that you run through an oscillator. But like this is literally just doing all of that mechanically.
That's so cool! Mechanical frequency modulation! Oh my gosh! Okay, so much music nerdery that is possible here. Let's get into some hardware nerdery. Tell us about your prototyping process. You've got 2 separate PCBs on there. How did you come up with that design?
Yeah, and so I was designing the PCBs and was thinking about how to mount it on the board, and I thought it would be really fun to have the PCBs themselves be structural rather than having the PCB and then like figuring out the mounting separately, since PCB boards are pretty, they're pretty sturdy. And so that's what I ended up doing. These PCB boards you can see are totally structural because I have the holes for the solenoids that they screw in actually built into the PCB design. And since there needed to be a gap here in order for the strings and solenoids to actuate, I thought it would be fun to actually have the board break into 2 and run some thick wires across it. I also thought that worked really well aesthetically, but also functionally, in order for it to just pass the signals over there and all of the power. When I first designed it, I accidentally screwed up a little and ended up with this PCB board, which you notice has everything it needs, but is only one piece. And I could have cut it, but it turns out because Oshpark didn't have V cuts that I just ended up with this one solid board, which was a little funny because I'm like, that's not quite right, but they were super cool enough and printed it again. So this is what the board ended up actually looking like when it was supposed to. So you can see it has all these cuts for the different shapes of it, and has all of the nice like what are they called, like mouse tooth pop outs to pop it out. So it allows me to just pop out the board and then literally pop it out, populate it, and screw it straight on, and then it was done. Didn't have to play with like a laser cutter or something for mounting the electronics as well. I mean, obviously I played with one in order to create the faceplate, and here I am elbowing the controller again.
That PCB panel is so cool looking. I would totally buy that as merch.
Oh, thanks. I've actually been thinking about that. It's funny that you mentioned that, making some PCB merch. I actually have a design for like a little pin that is PCB merch that I've been working on. It is in the other room, so I would have to disappear for about 30 seconds to find it, so we can decide whether that's something people want to look at this point or at the end. But yeah, definitely the PCBs, yeah, I just think look so cool and are so fun. It's really fun to explore. Yeah, the possibility of that for merch, especially inspired by all of like the badges and stuff.
Yeah. Can you show us, do you have any of your compositions loaded up there?
Yeah, I could totally load one up.
Yes. I'm so excited.
Yeah, let's see which one to do. So I'll do the one that there's the music video out for and everything.
Yeah, the Spark.
Yes.
Everyone, there's a link below. You can find the music video for this song if you want to hear it like super hi-fi, and there's also links to the Bandcamp for Electromancy if you want to hear more. Yeah, lots of places to find more of this stuff in a less live. Like, this is extremely exciting for me, and also people can find the like more hi-fi audio versions online.
Yes, this will not be the highest fi audio experience, that is for sure.
But we get to see it live.
Yeah. Okay, so I'm giving that a second to load. And oops, did I click the? No, maybe I clicked the right thing. Let's see. Okay. Boom, 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 boom. 1 second.
It's very metal of you to have crows in the background.
Yeah, right. So this track, let me just check something real quick.
Ooh.
Oh, no. Yeah. I want it to play through the guitar though.
That's so mean, making you like reset it up during the interview.
No, I was planning on doing this, but then I woke up late, and then
oh yeah,
it's entirely 100% my fault.
It's chill.
Okay, there we go. That's gonna do that. Let me just, because this is the same. The file I just opened is the same file with like all of the recorded music and everything in it. So give me a second to just turn off the. Great. Yeah, cool. So this will work. So this track is, I'm just going to use pre-programmed drums for this. We'll talk a little bit more about what's happening and to come with the drums in a second, I think.
Yeah.
I think totally. You said, yeah. So I'm just going to use some pre-programmed drums for this part. But just some background on this. So this track is called The Spark. I recently released a music video for it a couple months ago. It's also the one single on an EP I self-released at the same time a couple months ago. The EP is called Robot Black Metal because the style of music I do is black metal. So it has this original composition and then one cover of a famous black metal song called Transylvanian Hunger. So that EP is super fun. And just a couple exciting things about it. This is a pretty famous heavy metal magazine called Metal Hammer, and my EP was very briefly reviewed in it, which is super exciting. So congrats. I'm really stoked because this is a huge magazine. That the fact that they would even review my like one EP that I came out with so far is very exciting. This will also be one of the first tracks on my upcoming album, and also super exciting. After the EP and the music video, I ended up getting signed by a record label. So that album will be coming out through Metal Assault Records, which is super exciting as well. So yeah, let me just switch a couple of my pedals down here. Get this together, and turn up the volume. But this is, I probably won't play the whole thing, but I'll at least play some excerpts from this first track called The Spark. Just playing around with some of the pedals.
Oh yeah, I'm really curious about your pedal situation.
Let me try to get some cool angles for you. I'm just gonna skip ahead a little to this other part.
Oh.
And around there, the like drums kick in and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's at least a taste of it, right? I
Awesome, yeah, perfect.
Isn't like superb coming through,
Yeah.
which is the main reason I'm not running us through kind of the whole thing. But
that's really cool to see it in action. Thank you. Oh!
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I could just like let it finish out the song a little behind us, but yeah, that's the idea. Like for this part of the song, it's really fun to have this part playing one melody and these two kind of playing another. And so they're like phasing a little. And so, yeah, that's like one of those examples of like a little moment where I use the ability to play two different rhythms in different spots really well. And even at the beginning of that track, I'll just like jump back. Like this sort of melody is not impossible to play for a guitarist for sure, but it's just like fast enough and complicated enough, and like at I don't want to say at odds, but like playing with the like pacing and timing of the drums in a like kind of chaotic and complicated enough manner that I definitely think that part a normal guitarist could play, but it would be a pain in the ass to learn.
Yeah.
It would be really hard. And so it's really nice to just like get to compose this kind of crazy chaotic stuff, because that's the music I really like. And to be able to compose that and then plug it into a guitar and have it just go.
Yeah,
I've also been working on some cover tracks recently, which have been really fun and totally feel like I'm cheating, because I just like look up a song I like, I look up the guitar tabs, I download the guitar tabs, I run it through a program that converts it to MIDI, and like within finding a song, it's like under an hour between like me finding a song, messing with the data, and like throwing it on the guitar to like see how it sounds.
That's awesome.
Yeah, we're like most people, like, I'm working on a song, I've been learning it for the past couple of weeks. It's just like, oh yeah, like one of the last songs I recorded guitars for covering, I literally went from like, I want to cover this song to like, I have the guitars, and not just like one guitar, but I double track it where I record the same thing twice.
Ooh, yeah.
And you pan it hard and it creates a really good audio effect. So that means you need two perfectly in sync playing of it. And like literally went from like, I want to cover this song to having a double tracked recording of it on the guitars in an afternoon.
Wow. We have a question from someone in the comments who said that it's a clever string plucker, but they weren't hearing anything. But you actually were. All the like, so there was this like sort of like really fast guitar plucking sound coming through the speakers, and that was what was coming from the guitar. You could hear the string being plucked too, which I think added a really cool dimension. But yeah, it's almost easy to believe that like the guitar sound is just coming from the computer, but it's actually coming directly out of that guitar.
Oh yeah, I had all of the actual like guitar recording stuff turned off, so everything you heard there was just straight out of the guitar.
And then like some recorded background drums or whatever.
Yeah, the drums in the background, and there was this kind of PVC pipe that I edited to like be able to blow into it and make this horn sound.
Oh, yeah, it made like a didgeridoo kind of thing. That you
exactly. So I have one of those just right over there that I carved out of some PVC pipe. And so, because why buy instruments when you can build everything? And so that horn, just because I didn't feel like setting up everything for this, because it's a bit of a process. But so yeah, that horn and the drums were coming out of the computer. But I mean, I could totally just like solo the guitar right now so that you won't hear any of the other stuff. And so now it's soloed so that like literally no music is coming out of the, right. So 100% of this is just the signal coming directly out of the guitar and through the pedals. So there's no computer attached to this sonically right now. So you can still hear all of that.
So cool.
Yeah. And again, like this is not the best audio chain, right? It's like playing. I didn't like totally like retune my guitar. It's like close enough, and I didn't like totally fine tune all the pedals, and then it's coming out of this speaker and then through my terrible computer. My terrible cell phone thing. So like, if you can't hear a lot of the details of what's going on with the guitar, it's not your fault.
You just got to go look at the video, which is awesome. There's some really cool graphics and visuals in here. I love it. Yes. And the mannequins and stuff. And this drum. Let's talk about this drum.
Yeah.
Tell us about the drum. What's its deal? What is it doing? How do you do it?
Yeah. So the drums are... Okay, where do I want to start with the drums? The drums are... What you see in that video, I guess, is the first iteration of the drums. That's how I want to start. So I'm using a lot of the same electronics. Like you showed that video of that little tin...
the lunchbox.
The lunchbox with which is actually... So I'm... Oh, where to start? Okay. Yeah, so what you're seeing is that original iteration. So that lunchbox is the module, which then all those RC cables go out to solenoids, which are held in front of the drum and smack the drum. And what's cool is I realized when I was trying to figure out how to do the drums that these old PCB boards that came back as one solid piece actually have all the components for the drums, and because the drums are still kind of driven by the same way. So I actually repurposed these old PCB boards that I didn't throw out for some reason a year ago, and I'm using them for the drum control panel. So that's what you're seeing there, and that turned out really well. And so I had tried doing a bunch of different like actuation stuff where I had solenoids hit like drumsticks and stuff, which you saw actually in the video I made for the cover, Transylvanian Hunger. You can see that in that other video, but that didn't really work that great. And then just having motors hitting the drum straight on just created like a lot better accuracy in the drum compositions, again, because the drum compositions are so fast and some degree chaotic. Having precision is really critical. And so that's the iteration I had at the time of this set. And I made that right in the middle of COVID. So I was like, you know, I wasn't really thinking about live shows. I was just trying to capture the composition. And so those drums were loud enough to like record an album and make that music video, which were really cool. But right now, a friend and I are working on revamping the drums because the direct solenoids are just a little quiet. And while we could run bigger solenoids into the system and just like really ramp up the power driven into them, I didn't necessarily want to run that high level of power into my stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I'm an okay hacker, but like, you know, I didn't want to run that amount of power through it, and just really didn't think about that. So actually, me and my friend, I don't have anything to show you here because we're working on it at my friend's place in their hacker lab, but we are actually working on a system that still uses that same drive box, but instead of standard solenoids, we're using solenoid valves and using a compressed air system. So it's compressed. So the solenoids turn on and off a compressed air system, which hit pistons. And then we have these big pistons that smack the drums. And so it's actually using, again, all of the same technology, but just at the end, instead of straight solenoids, it's solenoid valves to pistons. And that's allowing us to get the drums to be like plenty loud for a live setting, and still having these like, you know, pistons with like actuation lengths of like 4 to 6 inches that are still smacking things as hard as like 800 BPM, just like totally unnecessary. And super, super awesome. We don't have the entire rig together yet, but we have total and individual piston systems, and we're just figuring out right now how to attach them and like how exactly we want to manage the like air use in the pressurized air system. And so I'm really excited to share that with the world and maybe with you all in the future when that's together. But I'm really stoked about that because right now that like, you know, vaccines are really out with COVID, and like the world is starting to open up a little more. It was really fun over quarantine to figure out like, how do I record my album? And now my album is complete, and I think we have a launch date of like January 2022. I'm thinking a lot about live shows, and I feel like the guitar is already 100% live ready, which is awesome. Like I just plug it in, you know, it's running. Like I was confident enough that I came into my lab only like 10 minutes before the call to turn things on, and I knew this would work, right? Like I am past the like demo day fear of like showing up an hour and a half beforehand, tweaking everything so that it will grow on showtime. It's strong enough. I turn it on and it plays, which is awesome. And so just trying to get the drums to do that at power, and then I'm really excited to take these hopefully to some venues and actually play some like live robot metal shows.
Oh, that's so good. Every time you say that, like something like that, like live robot metal shows, my like brain goes pop again. It's like little pop rocks in my brain. Like, yes, robot metal. Okay, so the final, well, sort of besides yourself, of course, you've got your guitar, you've got your drums, and you've got these mannequins. Tell us about the mannequins.
Yeah, so the mannequins are my bandmates. They are just mannequins that I found that I've carved out the faces of and filled, am I getting that right? Yeah, carved out the faces of and filled with LEDs. And so I run the same exact MIDI data I run to the different instruments, but to the different mannequins, and it has them light up based on the composition. And so that creates a really fun, like, visual element where on the stage there's also all these mannequins, and one mannequin's face lights up to the drum composition, one mannequin's face lights up to the guitar composition to add, because like one of them's the quote unquote drummer, even though it just stands there kind of stoically and creepily and has the lights. And it really also builds into the whole aesthetic of the band, which I see being more a like surrealist kind of thing, where there's like all these instruments but no one's playing them, but then there are these mannequins which are stoic, which are kind of playing them, and I want everything on the stage to be like close enough that you get they're related, but they're not actually touching, and kind of like, you know, if like Dali was trying to draw a like metal band stage and everything was just kind of like disassembled to some degree but still functional, that's kind of how I envision the visual of that. And so the mannequins are really a part of that. And if you give me a second, I could probably turn one of the mannequins on based on the drum composition. So I'm going to do that, and then do this, and then this.
There's some visuals of this in your music video as well, where you've got this like guitar going in different colors.
You can see it very, very well in the music video.
On the guitar one, is it that does each string have its own color? Or each note have its own color?
Oh, yes. So that's exactly how it works. So each note has its own color, and that's how you see the composition. Right in that video, you can see that super well.
That's so cool. One thing that I love about music videos in general is that like there's this aspect of, you've heard the song a million times, but there's extra things that you hear when you see it being played, or when you see a visual feedback as well. It actually helps you realize that there's more there and sort of tune into the rhythm more and like what's going on with the different instruments more, because you have an extra layer of sensory input, which I think is really cool about this.
I completely agree, which is why like it's so fun to get a close-up view of this, and I really love showing that. But unfortunately on a stage, most people aren't really going to have the ability to see the guitar that close up, especially with how small the actuation is. And so that was also part of like the idea of bringing more of a visual element to it. I just turned on this mannequin to go based on the guitar. I'm going to turn down the light just a little so you can see it better.
Oh yeah, perfect. I love it.
Yeah, and by turn down the light a little, I mean close my garage door. So
perfect.
Let me get this together. Oh yeah. Also, this is one of my band T-shirts. Whee!
Yeah.
You can see the mannequins and me and all the electronics. And so anyway, so I've got
Electromancy.
So I've got the same exact, okay, what's the best angle to show this at? Whatever, we'll figure it out as we go. I've got the same exact composition running to the guitar as I do to this, and I've got no audio turned on from the actual computer, so yeah.
Mm.
Up a little so you can see.
Yeah.
Right, and I'll skip to a part where you can see again this. So it's showing a little of that, and I'll skip ahead a little bit more. So I'm kind of showing the same segments that I showed earlier.
Mm.
Oh, I guess, yeah. So it just shows a little bit about how it works, and then I can also throw, you know, another one goes through the guitar composition, or
And yeah, again, we might be having some like frame rate issues with actually being able to see this fast enough for it to really reflect what it's doing. But again, you can watch the video, and if you see Step play
Yeah, watch
live,
the video. It's like also light level causes a huge difference in
oh, that makes
how
sense.
well you can see it. And so I wanted to keep the light at least enough that you could still see me pretty well. But I imagine for like a actual show, the light levels are going to be a lot lower. I just know the light sensitivity on my phone camera is garbage. So it looks like a ton clearer in person. And then when the lights are dark, it's like really stark. It's really intense. I did actually have some firmware issues, though, in order to get it to show this far. It's funny that you mentioned that. When I was first putting this together, I already had the guitar working and I wanted to get the lights to go. And I was just having, every LED switch on the note, but I was running it through this composition and like nothing, it was not working at all. I would play, run it for 10 seconds, hit stop, and the like LEDs would keep rotating for another minute because it was trying to catch up. And then I like had this idea of instead of changing every LED every time a note switched, it kind of shifted, or not every time a note switch. It's just every iteration on the board. Like when a note struck, it did like a fade effect down the board. And so instead of updating every single LED throughout the time, it updated a group of LEDs. And then the next iteration, it updated the next group of LEDs and just kind of shifted everything down. And that like was one of those, like, it was late at night. I had been like working on firmware way later than I should have been. My like brain was only half there. And I was just like, but I'm going to figure it out, and just kind of tried this and then like ran it, and it just worked. And I was like, okay, I'm not going to overthink that. I'm just going to cruise with it. And yeah.
So yeah, we're almost at time here. Oh, I just have a couple more questions for you before we wrap up here. You use a lot of pedals in order to get more notes out of your guitar and stuff and get different effects. Have you ever thought about designing any of your own pedals? And if so, what would it be?
Yeah, that's a great question. I have considered it. And one day I probably will play around with it just because it sounds like a lot of fun. It's one of those things that like there are so many people who hack on pedals that whatever I want, I feel like I could probably find. So sorry, 1 second. I wanted to just start this so that this did some nice fun stuff. But yeah, I just feel like a lot of the pedals are like, that's like a nice to have. Like I mentioned, I like want to make this robot metal band. And so I need instruments, especially since I can't physically play instruments anymore. I like need the instruments first. So that's kind of like the first thing to work on. And then like, well, now let's get the drums live show ready. And I'm sure once like the band is totally like, I've been going on shows and like the drums just work and the guitar just works and all of that, then I'll probably get the like hacker fever, hacker itch, and just want to build something else for the band. And at that point I could definitely see myself going into pedals. And I do think that would be really fun because I like experimental stuff. It would be fun to kind of combine different elements of pedals. But I also know that like pedals are a hobby that can get very expensive. Not that like hacking is cheap,
totally.
And buying a bunch of motors is cheap, but when you're getting to like really high fidelity audio circuitry, I just know that's also an area that I could see myself getting really into and dumping a bunch of money into. And so being like a little just I say one project at a time, even though I've got like 3 for this band, but like, only so many projects at a time.
But like you say, you can kind of find pedals that do most of what you would want to do. And there's even like programmable pedals where you can like, they have a teensy in them. You can like make it do sort of whatever you want. And no one's making a guitar like you have. No one's making these mannequins like you have. There's like Little Dada, which is kind of like a DIY, actuators for musical instruments, but it's also really expensive and you'd have to have like put it together. But this you can have super custom, do exactly what you want. And so it seems like such a rich ground for you.
Exactly.
I would love
building more weird robots is definitely what I see more in the future than like building pedals.
totally.
Like, I really want to try. Me and that same friend who are working on the drums. We started building a like single stringed instrument that is kind of all fretting, that has like a motor that what's it called? Like a belt motor that moves it up and down on a wheel. And we like started working on it, but we're like, hold on, let's finish the drums first and like kind of put it aside. But like, I really want to make like more weird like actuated string instruments and robots. I just think that's where a lot of my excitement comes from.
Yeah, and it goes back to this tradition of, automaton bands where they had like, one machine that plays like a harpsichord and a violin. It has like a wheel that's a bow that like bows the violin, and like xylophone and stuff all in one. But like back in the day, it would be like, I don't know what, pneumatics or something. And like it's this strong tradition that's still alive, and I love that. But being done in a totally new way by you. So we're at time. I would love to show people your links and stuff. And if you have anything else to throw in there, now is the time.
Yeah, please do. Let's see. Do I have anything else? I mean, yeah, we've got the links. I've got
which you can find here in the. It's on the Instagram.
So yeah, a ton of different links. I mean, I don't know. Did you have an idea of how you wanted to go through this, or should I just start saying random things?
You can say random things. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, if you're like a social media person, at Robot Metal Band is how you can find me /us. By say us, I mean me and the mannequins and robots. At Robot Metal Band on Instagram and Twitter and such. We've got also we've got the Bandcamp, which is cool. On the Bandcamp, you can find all of the releases so far, a couple singles. I also did a really experimental cover of Piano Phase, which is a whole other thing if you like really experimental deep cuts. But then also I've got like my EP there and a couple t-shirts. I've got 2 different t-shirt designs. This cool like Electromancy pink one, and then more of a like creepy mannequin cutout face one, which is super fun. And you can even see the mannequins wearing them, which is funny. When I first got the shirts, I'm like, oh, I should like maybe get my friends here to put them on and take pictures. And then I realized all of my bandmates were mannequins. And I was like, this is literally what they were built for. So I threw all the shirts on them.
You have your music video up on YouTube.
Yeah, we've got the video up on there. Electromancy also has music on Spotify. If you're a Spotify user, you can just look up Electromancy, check out all the music there. So there's a lot of cool stuff. Yeah, we've got that music video. And I think in October, I'm going to be releasing another single with another video called Disabled. And that's more about my experience with disability, but still has all the robots. And then we'll be releasing my album with Metal Assault Records in January 2022. So keep your eye out for that as well. There is a Patreon. The Patreon is not being heavily utilized at the moment. I'm planning on kicking that off with the album launch. There's just like kind of a bunch of material there. So I mean, if you're someone who's like, I want to make sure I don't miss anything ever, or whatever, like, or if you're just like, I want to kick you a couple dollars so you can keep doing this, like Patreon is super cool. Just don't expect any activity there until the album release. I'm actually working on a ton of content now, so that when the album is released, kind of doing a like big Patreon release along with the album. And like how I mentioned, I'm working on a bunch of covers. So I'll be doing like a bunch of covers and on the Patreon deep diving into a bunch of the robotics. But I don't want to be one of those people who like starts a Patreon. Is like, I want to do something every month. And then like you hear from me once every 6 months. So I, even though I threw up the page now, I'm like working on a bunch of content now to actually have a bunch of cool material with the album launch and kind of coincide it with that. So
nice. So you're all ready to go when it like drops. Sweet. Yeah. Well, Yay! I'm so
Woo!
excited we
Thanks
got
so
you on the
much
show.
Yeah, this is so
Yeah.
fun. Thanks so much for having me on. I clearly am in love with these robots, so it's so fun to share them with all of you, all of the robot metal goodness. And I'll definitely have to let you know once live shows start happening.
I'm so glad. I'm so glad we can have you on. Thank you everybody for watching, and hack on and rock on. Both of those things.
Woo! Thanks everybody.